Are you ready to unlock your full potential and maximize your productivity? Look no further than Productivity Smarts, the ultimate audio podcast hosted by renowned productivity expert Gerald J. Leonard. In every episode, Gerald shares captivating stories, invaluable tips, and cutting-edge strategies that will transform the way you approach productivity. Whether you're looking to reduce stress, overcome overwhelm, or simply get more done in less time, Productivity Smarts has got you covered. But that's not all. You'll also gain inspiration from real-life success stories of individuals who have achieved greatness through productivity. Plus, you'll learn the latest tools, techniques, and habits that will help you achieve a new level of happiness and fulfillment in your personal and professional life. So why wait? Join us every week as we delve into the exciting world of productivity and help you unleash your full potential. Get ready to take your productivity to the next level with Productivity Smarts. As a productivity expert and host of the Productivity Smarts podcast, Gerald J. Leonard has been a proud supporter of Kiva since 2011. Kiva is a non-profit organization that helps entrepreneurs in third world countries access the capital they need to start or grow their businesses. By making a small loan through Kiva, you can help these entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, support their families, and contribute to their local economies. And with a repayment rate of over 96%, your loan can be relent to another entrepreneur once it's repaid, creating a ripple effect of positive change. So if you're looking for a meaningful way to make a difference in the world, consider making a loan through Kiva. With loans as small as $25, anyone can be a microlender and help change lives. Visit kiva.org to learn more and start lending today.
Well, today I'm speaking to Dr. Glen Robison. He is a podiatric surgeon turned health visionary and author of The Healthy Dad, Sick Dad. He blends his medical training with holistic practices to help people transform their health before chronic disease takes hold. His journey from the surgeon's table to wellness advocate offers profound lessons in health, purpose, and productivity. Dr. Glen, how are you?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, listen, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to any other episodes, but I always start off with this question because I'm a musician, and that is, what's one of your favorite songs or your favorite bands or your favorite style of music?
I've listened to a lot of your prior podcast. And so my statement on music is it's instrumental. And if I could sit in a symphony for a day, I could do it. And the reason why I like instrumental music is I create my own words as I listen to it. So if it's like Braveheart, or if it's like, October Sky, the soundtrack of October Sky, or, a bunch of these other soundtracks, I just turn out the words and listen to the music. And that's how I become productive in my thoughts. So.
Excellent. Well, music, the root of the word music is the muse, and it's to force you to think. It basically is created, and you start listening to music, and it either takes you back to where you were when you heard the song the first time, or if you've never heard the song, it takes you to somewhere that it kind of, whatever memories it brings up, and it puts you in a meditative, very thoughtful state. So it doesn't surprise me that you would say that. So excellent.
No, I have to say this one thing. I know we talked a little bit about it, but my mom, she was a piano teacher.
Okay.
And she taught everybody in my hometown piano lessons. And if there's a regret, which I don't have a whole lot of regrets, is that I never learned how to play the piano from her. I just listened to her teach these students. And
right.
I loved listening to her play the piano. In fact, I was in band in high school.
Okay.
And I went from, this is my story, a very quick story on the music. I went from playing the trumpet to the clarinet to the bass clarinet to the principal's office. And so I actually played the bass clarinet in what you call the 49th Street Army Band. And
right.
I just, for some reason, I was more into sports and all that stuff. But man, I tell you that music is, everybody needs it. I mean, it heals.
It really is. It really is. I did my bachelor's and master's in music. And after having kids, I decided I didn't want to be on the road, and I'd let some orchestra gigs go. But I always kept playing, even though I was working in IT, project management, and I kept playing as a professional as well. And I did both pretty much most of all my life. And it was like when I got into IT and really started learning how to code and some of the other things, It was like picking up another instrument. I couldn't explain how I knew what I knew. And I couldn't explain why this felt so simple, except that later on I learned through neuroscience that the part of the brain that is used for mathematics and engineering and so on is the same part of the brain that gets developed when a kid is learning music. And so one of my pet peeves is when schools have budget crunches or budget challenges,
Right.
the first things they want to take is the arts and music. And it's
Yep.
like, no, that is the thing that a lot of kids love, but they may not become professional musicians, but they may become an engineer. And by learning a musical instrument, their brains are being developed to become that great engineer. Because a lot of software coders and engineers are scientists have a musical background. Einstein played violin. Henry Ford played violin. And it's amazing what music does to the brain. And
Yeah.
so I totally agree with you. Let me ask you this question. How did you get started in your field? And what do you think has made you so successful? And maybe give us a little bit of the nuances about the healthy dad and the sick dad and how that ties into your life.
Okay. Yeah, very good. I'm going to jump back when I was a kid.
Yep.
And they threw a cow heart on my school desk when I was in 6th grade. And everybody kind of squirmed and everybody's like, "Oh, gross." And I grabbed that little razor blade and I went to work. I cut open the heart. I wanted to see what was in it. And so I had a very curious mind to medicine. And there's some other things that were, on the way, but I was told I'd never make it into college. So my whole goal was to get into college.
Yeah.
And then when I got into college, I was like, okay, what am I going to do after college? And I stumbled upon a grade advisor and he says, "Well, you should be a podiatrist." And I go, "What's that?" And he says, "Well, it's a specialist that works with foot and ankle." And I was like, okay. So I went and worked with one. I was like, this is incredible. They work with kids. They work with elderly patients. They work sports medicine. And there's a whole gamut of things that a podiatrist does. And so I put my application in and got accepted into podiatric medical school and did the 4 years there, did a 2-year surgical residency, and then got into private practice and my health went south. Then I had to reach out and start to find things how I could make my health better without downtime because I was in private practice. I didn't have any other partner. And so I found this gentleman that was able to work on my back without any surgery or injections. And he got me out of trouble. And then I was like, okay, I'm okay. I didn't change anything for a year or two. And then the pain started to creep back, but it didn't change my thoughts on the way my health was until my daughter had an experience.
Yes, I remember that.
And this leads into the healthy dad, sick dad, because when she was 2.5 years old, she was in pain. And her pain was, "Dad, I can't eat. It hurts too bad." And so every time we try to feed her, she would have extreme pain.
Yeah.
So we go to the pediatrician. They said, "Well, just soften the food." Well, that didn't work. I took her to the ER. They didn't have an answer. So I was like, well, wait a minute. This guy worked on my back. Maybe he can help my daughter.
Yeah.
So I called him up and he says, "Yeah, bring her down." And I took him down. I took my daughter down to his place, laid her on the table, and he went right to work. And I'm sitting there observing from a medical Western mindset eye view and had to trust this guy that's helping my daughter. So I'm listening and watching him do things. And even though he worked on me, I got to see what he actually did. And there was a point where he did this little manipulation on her, and I started hearing gurgle sounds. And then my daughter stood up and said, "Daddy, I'm hungry." And I says, "Whoa, okay." So we took her into the kitchen area and we fed her, and she had no pain. And she hasn't had pain since. And so I was like, oh my heavens, here I'm trained as surgeon to cut and repair things. But what happened in that room, I had never experienced before. So I asked the gentleman, I says, "Could you teach me what you just did to my daughter?" He says, "I'll teach you whatever you want." And so 15 years, I spent a lot of time with him studying, learning. And he, in the title Healthy Dad, Sick Dad, he is my healthy dad. He's my mentor.
Yes.
My sick dad is my biological father that passed away,
Right.
a heart attack right before the book came out. So sorry for the long introduction, but that's how it came to be. So
that's why I wanted you to tell that story because, again, going through the book, I appreciate you're sending me the information and sending me the book. And as I started going through it, the title really stood out. Like, okay. At first it's like Healthy Dad, Sick Dad. I know we had a conversation beforehand, but then going through and reading it and then hearing the story about your daughter and then you learning from the gentleman, your healthy dad, about the things that he was doing that was more holistic in medicine. And although he understood the Western medicine concepts and principles, he also understood how the body worked with energy,
Yes.
with blockages, with meridians, with your chi, and all of those things, and the yin and the yang of the body. And so I think I said this with you earlier, but I'll say it again on record. I've interviewed a lot of doctors, right? And they are really good in medicine, and many of them are really good at diagnosing, and they focus on productivity and helping their patients do more than just get better, but really, thrive. But I've never met or had a conversation with someone who understood the power of how our bodies are put together from a holistic standpoint and how our organs work together, how they follow a cycle, how they're connected to the elements of the earth, how there's this yin and yang. And I love the idea of, you ask yourself in the morning, am I cold or am I warm? Am I energetic or am I not? And based on that, that's what you eat. You basically kind of figure out. And so instead of just kind of going and sticking to a diet, you look at, okay, what is my body saying? Right? Now, based on your knowledge, you know that, hey, if I'm cold, I probably need some chicken soup, right? Yes. And I need this or I need that, or I need to drink this water. Or if I'm not going throughout the day, I probably need to do this or that so that my body can get back to that state where it's going to do what it needs to do.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so I really was looking forward to and excited about our conversation today. So let me ask you this, as a trained surgeon and holistic practitioner, how do you manage your own health in the midst of a busy schedule? And what systems or rules you keep that help you with your discipline and also tie in the concept of this yin and yang that I talked about?
I think it goes on a very deep level, what you do, productivity. So I've been in practice 26 years.
Okay.
And I keep my overhead low. I make sure my new patients have enough time from the start to the finish with me. I don't have a nurse that goes in there and does all the little things. I do everything from start to finish. And so because I'm in a routine of things, so let's say I'm going to do a little office surgery, I set up the table, I do everything, but yet I can still see 40 to 50 patients a day. And how I do that is, one is engaging with the patient fully. So when they're asking me questions, I'm answering the questions. I'm not avoiding them. And I listen. I think listening is the biggest key to communication.
Yeah.
And so when a person fully understands that that other person is engaged and listening, it could take that 5-10 minutes I'm with the patient feels to them like it's a 20-30 minute office visit.
Right.
Because a lot of times patients don't get the doctor. They don't get to ask questions. They don't get to participate in their health.
Right.
So I schedule it. So if there's going to be, I look at my schedule and I say, you know what, let's close it off. And so I'm not driven by the money dollar as per se. We all have to pay our bills. We all have to pay, this life that we're in with everything around us, the overhead that we have. But my main focus is that person. And if I can get them better, life takes care of itself. And it's always worked that way.
Yes. Now, help me understand with that context for yourself. Explain how you use the yin and yang principle that you talk about in the book. Okay.
So yin and yang, people shy away from it because it's just a 4,000-year-old concept out there.
Yeah.
But it's really basic and simple. When I wake up in the morning, am I hot or am I cold? If I'm cold, I'm going to eat something warm. And if I'm hot, I'm going to eat something cooling. Now, that could be a variety of things. And that depends on how much phlegm I have, how tired I am. So if I'm tired and I have a little phlegm in my mouth, well, I'm going to gravitate to the chicken soup. Or if I'm really hot, then I'm going to gravitate to the chicken salad. So the food types that I eat whether it's hot or soups or solids, also plays into that. And then the rule of thumb for me is it's fully organic. So I know that I don't have any of these chemicals such as Roundup, glyphosate, and these other things in it per se.
Right.
But because of these chemicals that we have in our food system, they call it water soluble. So it's in our air, it's in everything. So you can get some of that stuff into even organic foods that can be traced. So when I get up in the morning, the very first thing I do is I take what you call a daily detox mix.
Okay.
And it's written in the book, and it consists of spirulina, which is a green-blue algae, apple pectin, a red marine algae, sodium alginate, and green vibrance. Green vibrance is a freeze-dried probiotic.
Okay.
And so I mix all that stuff together, and I take a teaspoon, I put it in a pint of water, reverse osmosis water, and then I take concentrates, which is trace minerals, and I'm up to like 25 drops of that into this bottle, and I shake it up and I drink that.
Right.
What that does for me first thing in the morning was, one, it binds any kind of the chemicals that I ate the day before from foods, and it'll bind that and eliminate it out of the body.
Right.
So it keeps my immune system up. And then it's just a way to eliminate toxins and keep myself healthy. So my main goal is to protect my immune system through this eating of hot or cold with this yin-yang type.
Right.
Now, if you look at the scale in the book, you'll see there is a balance. There's a 0.
Yeah.
Now, balance is that medium part right there is the breast milk where females will give their child.
Yeah, right.
That's the most balanced nutrition thing that they can give. So as we get older, we start to branch out. Well, maybe we're too little yang or we're too little yin. And we can figure that out by how we feel. So somebody that is always hot, kicking their covers off their bed sheets, well, they're probably on the yang side, and they need some of the yin side to neutralize them out.
Right.
And so when you get to the point of the 10 level of yang, well, you're a heart attack waiting to happen. When you get to the 10 side of the yin, well, you're going to get pretty sick and probably end up in the hospital.
Yeah.
So that's been my goal. I try to stay plus or minus within 2 or 3 of that balance chart. And if somebody just keeps it simple and just asks themselves at every meal, am I hot or am I cold?
Right.
And that helps to balance you out. And then the bonus is you eat organic, you eat just good, clean, whole foods that are the most, the closest to nature.
I love what you said in the book, because you said, that a lot of people will come back and say, man, organic food is so expensive.
Yeah.
Right. But your comeback to that was, yeah, but if you eat the other stuff and you end up in the hospital, how much more expensive is it going to the doctor and all the medical bills and all of the health issues you're going to have later on in life by not eating cleaner?
Exactly. You can't put a price on your health.
Exactly. Now, let me ask you this. Many professionals push productivity at the cost of their health, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're just kind of burning the candle on both ends and so on and so forth. What are the most common health trade-offs, and how do you advise to reclaim that balance? And can you also tie in, hopefully this is correct, the 5 elements?
Okay.
And the way the organs work along with that.
Yes, and I got a classic example. So the 5 elements, there's what you call the pair organ theory.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought that was fascinating. I'm sorry. I just had to say that. When I read that part, I was like, this is like really fascinating, the way you laid that out. So go ahead.
Let's just take, for instance, your lung, and its paired organ is called the intestine, large intestine. They go together. They're kind of like the yin yang. They're components. They work hand in hand. So when your immune system is off and you are not digesting well, let's say you have you don't have regular bowel movements,
right?
And people are constipated, or they may even have too much diarrhea per se too. But if that intestine is off in a roundabout way, it's going to affect the lung. Now, when somebody comes in with pneumonia or with congestion, phlegm in their throat and their respiratory tract, everybody goes right to the lung.
Right.
And I go to the large intestine. Let me give you an example. I was consulted on a patient in the hospital, and there's a patient that I had, and I went down to the ER, and I was looking at this patient, and I asked the simple question to the doctor. I says, "When's the last time this patient had a bowel movement?" And he goes, "I don't know." And so he looked at the record, and he says, "Well, it's been a couple of days." I says, "If you get him to have a bowel movement, you probably won't need to put him in ICU." And so I went back to work, and I got a text message, a phone call, and he says, "How did you know that?" He says, we just gave that, we got his bowels moving. He had a bowel movement, and now he's breathing on his own. And so
Right.
we don't have to put him in the ICU unit." And then I had another case where I'll probably get in trouble with this one, but my brother, he never listens to me anyway. So he was in a university hospital, and I took a few days off because I didn't know if I was going to see him again.
Yeah.
And I drove up to Utah and went to that hospital up there at University of Utah, and was talking to him because he had a very severe lung infection. And I told him, I says, "I want to talk to your lung doctor." And so he prepped the lung doctor. He says, "Yeah, my brother's coming up, and he got some questions for you." And I talked to the doctor, and I says, "What is your view on the lung and large intestine comparison?" And here's something I should never assume. He was Oriental descent, so I just assumed that he may have known the 5 elements because of his nationality. And I catch myself now that I don't do this anymore, but he told me, he put his hand and he put it right at the diaphragm. He says, "I work from here up." And so that said, he never even looks at the large intestine.
Right.
And so that's the basis, one basis on the 5 elements. Another thing on the 5 elements is, here's how it also works. When I see diabetic patients,
Yes.
they think that it's so like type 2 diabetics. They think that it's mostly all food, what they eat. That's a fraction of it. What they don't understand is that type 2 diabetics has a huge component of emotion. And so I find within my own practice that those that have been later diagnosed with type 2 diabetics have had some form of injury to their mental, emotional side.
Yeah.
They either lost their husband, they lost somebody in their family, or they had a divorce. They had something go on that they now feel either abandoned, they now feel like they don't love themselves anymore. And that is a huge, huge component in treating diabetes. And so the kidney is worry, worry, fear.
Right.
The lung is grief and sorrow. Okay. So if you can get somebody that's diabetic to stop their worrying, to start loving themselves, to think of, okay, I am important, I can do this, and really take their energy up, well, lo and behold, their sugar levels start to maintain. Now, I'll get them on various diets for diabetes in chapter 10 of that book,
Right.
which will drop things down. But again, it goes back to the 5 elements. If you can take them out of anger, which is, liver and heart, and get them to a component where it's different, they may not be as angry when they go home to their wife and kids. And that's
Right.
why, again, I'm jumping all over the place, but let's say a husband on a hot day in Arizona goes out and gets a big, huge hamburger and fries and a soda. That body, that liver is going to have a lot of hard time processing that hamburger. And so it makes them more angry and more angry and more angry because the element of liver is anger. And so they go home and they don't hug their wife. They
Right.
don't talk to the kids. And so if I could say, okay, instead of grabbing that hamburger, well, why don't you grab like a chicken salad or something like that that's more refreshing, and it doesn't have that hard, dense type that your blood is going to have to pump harder, your organs are going to have to pump harder to digest.
Right.
And so that's just a simple thing. So taking these 5 elements, the yin yang, and trying to simplify it like I have in the book, to get people to say, "Oh, okay, actually, I can do this." It's a game changer.
Yes, it is. It's what's interesting. I don't know if you know my story, but I'll start with someone else's. It was a young lady I interviewed last week. She had multiple sclerosis and naturally healed herself. It took over time, but it was basically when she realized what she had, she started learning something about what's called epigenetics. And that's the idea that your environment, your emotions, the things around you can help you turn on or turn off your genes, right? And it's all kind of tied into what you're talking about with the 5 elements. And she started journaling, she started doing yoga, she started doing all these things to de-stress her body and so on. And over time, she was able to recover from MS.
Yes.
I myself, in 2018, had a major bout with vertigo, lost the ability to walk. I had my vestibular inner ear, on my right inner ear, I had lost 86% capability. I had 14%. When I left the hospital, I had to use a walker to come home. There was no medication. And that's what led me to do this podcast, Productivity Smarts, is because as I was going through the journey of healing, because there was nothing they could give me. There was no medicine. And so I started learning about neuroscience and epigenetics and kinesiology and brain gyms and all these different things, and started changing my mindset, my life, and so on and so forth. This year I took an EEG and it came back clear. The doctor says, you have no residuals of the vertigo, of the vestibular, and so on. And so I say that to say our emotions and our emotional state, our environment has a huge impact on our bodies and on how we do health-wise, and that many of the ailments are simply signs that we're off in some form or fashion when it comes to our emotions, our psyche, or the way our energies are being managed, or how we're taking in food, and so on. And so that's why as I was listening and reading through your book, I found it so fascinating, the pairing of the elements and the pairing of the organs and the yin and the yang and the 5 elements, because I've experienced it myself, firsthand, and have gone from over the last 5-6 years. I think I started a podcast maybe 2 years ago, of having these conversations and going through this and taking in everything I've been reading from all the people I interview. Because if I bring you on the podcast, it's because I want to read your book myself. That's my secret. And so I really get a chance to really learn. And I was able to get healed from that. And I've seen other people who had these chronic issues heal themselves naturally through really understanding what's going on with the body.
Oh, absolutely. I've been reading these books in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
The one I'm reading right now is called Mental Chemistry by Charles Hanel.
Okay.
Fascinating book. Fascinating. I mean, I tell you the knowledge back in the early 1900s, even before Napoleon Hill and all those, I encourage everybody to read these type of books. He says in there that all thoughts, all emotions create our diseases.
Yes.
And I agree. I believe that. So if we go throughout the day and we're angry or something, well, we're going to probably either end up with something going on with the liver or something going with the heart. If we worry and fear, we're going to have something going on with our kidney. And if we have grief and sorrow, we're going to have some lung issues.
Right.
So if we can maintain an enjoy or enjoyment that we find within, because joy, that's why I always sign my books INJOY, because joy is not found on the outside. We only express it on the outside, but it's always in the inside. It's always there.
Exactly.
We take our whole life trying to find it. It's always there. So
yes. Let me ask you another question. I want to get back to some of this part that we're talking about here. But the other question I have is for knowledge workers who struggle with energy, mental clarity, or burnout. Which of the 2 or 3 health pivots could produce the biggest boost in their performance to help them get out of this malaise or this funk that they find themselves in?
Okay, so there's the food component, and then there's the external component on this one.
Okay.
So on the food component, I would definitely encourage them to have a 3 omega oil, not a 6, 9s, or 12s.
Yep.
But something like the 3s that actually help to decalcify the pineal gland, the higher cognizance, that little gland in the middle of your head,
Right.
directly in there. So that actually is like a detergent. It helps clear that out. So that gives you clarity. I would also encourage, if you eat fish, to eat cilantro or parsley, but definitely cilantro, because that binds the mercury so it doesn't sit into your body, and then it takes it out. So if you're kind of eating anything that has like tuna, fish, salmon, any of that, you need that. I would definitely be looking at also that daily detox mix, seaweed, which is a binding agent that helps to eliminate toxins out of your body.
Right.
Probiotics are also very, very, very important. Now, here's something that I look at my body as a yogurt factory. So if I took 1 teaspoon of grass-fed yogurt and eat it on an empty stomach, that will propagate over about 4 hours of 3 trillion units of probiotics into your intestinal lining. And sauerkraut does the same thing, grass-fed yogurt, miso tamari. But everybody needs some of this good bacteria because we are not getting it in our food sources. So there's pill forms like acidophilus and things like that. So they need that form of element in their body. I'd also encourage them to, if they're really sluggish, see what their B12 level is on Western medicine level. But the other side of it is called Wi-Fi. Now, if they sleep by their phones, or if they have a Wi-Fi router next to them, the EMFs that are emitted off that is causing so much restlessness in your sleep, unexplained diseases that the doctors have no explanation for. But shutting off the Wi-Fi is vital. I even go a step further. I sleep with what you call a copper blanket, so it's on top of me. And so I'm not bombarded by any kind of frequencies in my neighborhood. I also have what you call a Faraday cage on my smart meter that they put on all these houses. And so it blocks the emission, the EMFs, or electronic magnetic frequencies out there.
Yeah.
So this is probably the major issue right now, why people feel sluggish, why people are just having a hard time concentrating, is the EMFs. And the 5G is not helping at all.
Right. It's so fascinating that you're having this conversation, because it's like our bodies are energetic. We're energetic beings.
Yes.
And if you put I forgot what the name of the scope is, where you could see like the aura ring or the energy ring, it would look like the way the Earth looks, right? Where you see the magnetic field around it. We all individually have this magnetic field. That's why someone who walks close to you, you feel like, oh, they're in my space. They haven't touched you, but they've gotten into your energetic field. And then it goes down into the concepts of quantum physics. It goes so deep into how we're made. If I think about the good book, I'll just say that there's a passage that says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. That is so true. The more I've studied this, is just the creator who made us, right? It's just fascinating that the things that we're creating now, like Wi-Fi or just the satellites and the 5G that's all around us because our phones are picking it up, all of those are having an impact on us. And we're somewhat clueless at times that all these things are having an impact, but that the more knowledge we gain around, because I've never heard of a bronze blanket or whatever. I'm gonna have to look into that.
It's copper shield.
Copper. Yeah. I'm gonna have to look into that, because I do believe that, my wife and I, we've moved our phones away from our bed. We have them in the room, but they're away from us, and we close the door, and I know the Wi-Fi is still on, but it just resonates with me that because of what I've learned about these different areas, how true that is, and that some of the things that we go through now, we're not able to explain because of the impact. And especially in school, my wife's a school teacher, and I have to say this, for parents who have little ones, don't allow your phone or the tablet to be the babysitter.
Yes.
Because kids now are going to school because of all this technology and the things we're talking about. They are losing the ability to concentrate. And they're so used to the dopamine hits from their babysitters, if the babysitters are the phone and the tablets, that when those things are taken away and they have to sit for 30 minutes and do a math test or an English lesson, they are actually now in pain because they're not getting the physical reaction or the dopamine hits. And now you have many more elementary school age kids that are acting out because they're not getting what they want from those mechanical devices, right? Because it's changed how their bodies work. And so when they're not around it, they find themselves in pain. And because there's a lot more, what I would say, acting out that school kids are having, and even adults, I think, are going through those challenges. And we don't know that a lot of the advances that we've made are actually causing some of these problems.
Exactly. Yep. There's a couple of other elements. You may like this one, but I will tell people to listen to 432 megahertz or a 963 or a 528 megahertz frequency. Get it on YouTube, and it has healing components. So it helps to rewire the brain in there in your soul.
Yeah.
But the 432 is really powerful. I also
is it like a theta wave or
alpha, theta. I don't know fully. You'd know that more than I would on music wise. But
I think it's more theta. Yeah. It puts us in a calming state, in a relaxed state, and it helps rewire us.
And then one thing I do too, subtly, is if you look right over my left shoulder, you'll see a painting. I do all these paintings myself.
Oh, wow.
And so I paint, and I have them all spread out in my office. So every treatment room is different. So if somebody comes in and say has a kidney problem, well, they need the color of the kidney, or every lung, every organ has a color. Yeah. And so it actually heals them by just looking at the healing. Andre Moritz talks about that quite a bit in his books. And so he's no longer with us. I've just tried to emulate his teachings. And so when I paint a subject matter, I make sure that there's healing components in all those art. And so just going to a museum or art or something, get it out of your head is also healing. Yeah,
exactly. And being in nature where there's tons of color, right? Being out in nature. So listen, as we begin to land this, the subtitle of your book, Healthy Dad, Sick Dad, what good is your wealth if you don't have your health? How true is that for our current generation? And what's one thing that if someone wants to do right now after they finish listening to this podcast and go, okay, yeah, you're right. What good is my wealth if I don't have my health? What's one thing they could do right now that could have a big impact on their life?
Just be aware of what you're eating. Just start there, and just have awareness, because if you're not aware of what you're putting in your mouth, well, 20 or 30 years down the road, that high fructose corn syrup is probably going to give you gout. That bunch of other elements are going to give you things that you probably wish you hadn't had. And I see that so often in my practice. These elderly patients that come in and they read the book, quite often they say, man, if I just would have applied that, I wouldn't be on an oxygen tank. I wouldn't be in this wheelchair. I wouldn't need a cane.
Right.
And most of them retire. And now they're confined to their recliner. My dad was the classic example of that. He was a farmer. I tried to help him with his diets, but he loves his ice cream at night and his chocolate bars and his soda as he goes to the farm. And I says, Dad, that's going to get you. And when he retired to his recliner, and he just stayed there. And he ended up with his last heart attack and passed away. But the advice I can give people, just be aware. Try to, look ahead 20 years from now. Don't look at look at your parents and see what they are. And if they're having health problems, they'll say, okay, maybe I need to change.
Yes.
Look at yourself right now. Do you have aches and pains? Well, if you're having a joint pain in your shoulders, your knees, your hips, well, maybe you have too much sugar in your diet.
Yeah.
So there's the little things. And then I would say, pick up the book. I'm not, if you have a chance, and if you have a low immune system, well, chapter 9 is really good on the immune diet.
Right.
You're
I love the
diabetic.
diabetes diet, the chapter on diabetes. Don't let your crises go to your waist.
You wait.
I really love that one. It's so obviously people can find it on Amazon or any bookstore. Where else can they learn about you or identify your information or just things that you publish and so on?
I'm on Instagram at Healthy Dad Sick Dad. You can see what kind of foods I eat. My wife's always posting the foods we eat for dinner, and so you'll get treated with, okay, this is what I'm eating. You'll get some other things there. LinkedIn. I haven't done a whole lot on there, but I'm there. And then I have my website. You can find a lot of information on there, drglenrobison.com. So
excellent. Well, Dr. Glen, thank you so much for pouring your heart into the book, because I think books are a lot more energetic in that when you read someone's book who's researched and put as much into it as you have, that you get their energy, you get their understanding. And I love the way you make the complexities of your medical field simple, that someone can read it. And because again, I've studied this stuff and I interview people all the time and I'm reading their books. But I love the way that you talk about the pairing of the organs with the 5 elements, because that just opens your mind to a whole new way of looking at your body. And just, again, if you're looking for a really good book about health and about just that's holistic, but it's also based on science and insight and research, Healthy Dad and Sick Dad is the book to get. So I'll definitely be sending this out and encouraging people, sending it out to my family and encouraging people to get your book, because it really is a great read, but it really does have great insights and great wisdom. So thank you so much for putting that together and sharing that with the world.
Well, thank you for your kind words. It's been wonderful being with you today.
Excellent.
If you're enjoying the content and finding it valuable, we would appreciate it if you could take a moment and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us and helps us reach a wider audience. If you leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. Not only does it help us improve the podcast, but it also helps us attract more sponsors and grow our community. Thank you again for your support and for listening to the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to Productivity Smarts, where we help you achieve your goals and live your best life. We hope you've gained valuable insights and actionable strategies to boost your productivity and increase your happiness and fulfillment. Remember to apply what you've learned and keep striving towards your goals. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring episodes and expert advice from our host, Gerald J. Leonard. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unleashing your productivity smarts.